We're back at Disneyland!
Leave today and enter the world of Random Land.
Every fan of Walt Disney knows that he was obsessed with transportation. Like this, and this, and this. But he wasn't just obsessed with the transportation of the past, but also of the future. Hot on the heels of creating several groundbreaking new attractions for the 1964 World's Fair, Walt Disney turned his attention back to Disneyland. And what he saw in Tomorrowland really got him thinking. See, by the mid-1960s, Tomorrowland was in desperate need of an upgrade to avoid becoming Todayland. I mean, it's hard to keep up with futuristic technology. Always in motion is the future. George Lucas? All sorts of new attractions using the latest technology developed for the 64 World's Fair were being prepared for Tomorrowland. High-tech animatronics in the Carousel of Progress, a brand new Omni-Mover system and special effects for adventures through inner space. All these new innovations on the way truly promised a Tomorrowland on the move. Jeff Heimbach? At the same time all this was going on, Walt Disney was developing a new obsession, what we would now call urban planning. The city of the future was taking shape in his head in what would eventually become the original concept for Epcot. Yeesh, but that's a whole other conversation we'll have to save for the future. Anyway, with his team back in California, Walt began to envision an attraction that would tie all these new Tomorrowland elements together. And it wouldn't just be any old ride, it would be a working prototype of a mass transit system of the future. Of course, I'm talking about the Peoplemover. Dun, 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 ba, 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 ba. One of the most beloved attractions of all time. For nearly 30 years, up to 60,000 guests per day rode through the skies of Tomorrowland on the Peoplemover. Younger guests and first-time visitors have probably wondered about the strange abandoned tracks winding their way through Tomorrowland. So for those of you who for one reason or another never got to experience the Disneyland Peoplemover firsthand, I'm going to take a minute and talk about what exactly it was. The ride vehicles were basically made up of small trains of 4 Peoplemover cars. Each car could carry up to 4 people. There were just over 60 of these trains, meaning nearly 1,000 guests could ride the ride at any given moment, and nearly 5,000 could ride per hour. Hi, that's a lot of math. Visitors queued up along the support columns going down the center of Tomorrowland and ascended to a rotating platform that matched the speed of the cars, so the cars themselves never actually had to stop. Continuous motion! One of the genius things about the Peoplemover is that unlike many of the other attractions at Disneyland, the ride vehicles themselves didn't actually have motors. In fact, they barely had any moving parts at all. Instead, about every 9 feet along the track, an electric motor would spin a tire that would grip the bottom of the ride vehicle and propel it along. Among other things, one of the benefits was that if any one motor gave out, the other motors would pick up the slack, so the ride never really had to shut down. This type of track system had also been invented for the 1964 World's Fair, specifically for Ford's Pavilion and their Magic Skyway attraction, which actually propelled real Ford vehicles along an elevated track. Disney originally approached Ford to sponsor the new Peoplemover ride at Disneyland, but Ford was a little bit nervous about promoting something that was meant to replace the car.
Oh geez, if we do that, we're gonna be out of jobs.
Since the ride vehicles were propelled by wheels in the track itself, Disney approached Goodyear, who decided, what the heck, slap a Goodyear tire on those things and we'll sponsor the ride.
Are those Goodyear tires in the track? Wow, quality.
The original 1967 route of the Peoplemover left the rotating platform down the track and took a left turn into adventures through inner space. Offering a sneak peek of Monsanto's mighty microscope, the Peoplemover then traveled over the Flight to the Moon building and the Tomorrowland stage on its way to the Carousel of Progress building. Now this building is Innoventions and guests enter the building upstairs, but back then the Carousel of Progress show was actually downstairs and the entire upstairs was filled up with this giant model of Walt's City of the Future, known then as Progress City or Epcot, Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow. The model was huge and actually contained working tiny miniature Peoplemovers to represent the mass transit system of the City of Tomorrow. After passing the model of Progress City, the Peoplemover exited the building right through this tunnel and then descended down this long downhill, first underneath and then over the monorail tracks, winding its way all the way through the Utopia area and eventually back alongside the monorail tracks and into the Circle Vision Theater. Circle Vision was basically a 360-degree movie theater, and the Peoplemover offered a view of the guests in the queue line below before coming out of this tunnel, taking a left turn down the tracks through the center of Tomorrowland and back to that rotating platform. When it was all over, guests had experienced a 16-minute ride through or around almost every attraction in Tomorrowland. Of course, Tomorrowland's always changing. In 1977, when they built Space Mountain, they actually incorporated the Peoplemover ride into Space Mountain itself, so guests could see very darkly into the belly of the beast and hear the screams of terrified space passengers. Space passengers? Speaking of space passengers, in the 1980s when Star Tours replaced Adventures Through Inner Space, the Peoplemover actually traveled right behind where C-3PO and R2-D2 have their witty banter in the queue area. After passing through Star Tours, the Peoplemover ended up going through the Star Trader. The ride vehicles actually passed right through here, right up in the building, offering a look down at the shop. Sadly, all good things must come to an end, and eventually, just shy of its 30th anniversary, the Peoplemover closed for good. Disney was preparing for another new Tomorrowland of 1998. This was going to be a golden future, an organic future, a steampunk future. And as part of this new future, the Peoplemover had to make way for a new ride called the Rocket Rods. We don't really have time to get into the whole history of the Rocket Rods, but basically they tried to put a very high-speed, brand new attraction onto the old Peoplemover tracks, and it didn't really work. And so, ever since the turn of the century, the iconic Peoplemover tracks have sat empty and abandoned in Tomorrowland. Luckily for die-hard fans of the attraction, when they built Walt Disney World in Florida, they built a Peoplemover of their own. Although it uses different propulsion and has a level track, it's a very similar ride. As a matter of fact, guests riding the Disney World Peoplemover can still see the model of Progress City, although slightly reduced in size. With Disney's recent purchase of Star Wars, Tomorrowland will change again, and many people hope for the return of the Peoplemover. But sadly, due to modern safety standards and OSHA laws, it doesn't really seem possible. That's why today we're taking a good look at the most famous abandoned attraction in Disneyland. It's a bummer that the Peoplemover can't return, but let's face it, Disney always comes up with something new and something magical. So I can't wait to see what the future holds for Tomorrowland.
Bob the Builder?
In fact, maybe you're watching this from the future and now the present is the past. Or maybe the present is the future of the... This is confusing. One more Peoplemover thing. If you check out the inside of the Little Green Men gift shop, you might spot something familiar serving as the checkout counter. Now, I'm not sure if they're built using actual old Peoplemovers or just a clever replica, but it is a pretty awesome tribute to the past.
Wow.
Alright, that's all for today. Make sure you guys subscribe for some more zany adventures, or go check out some of our past videos for more Disneyland history on things like the Skyway or the submarines, the futuristic vehicles of the past. Oh, wait a minute, are they the past vehicles of the future, or... I'm confused, never mind. Alright, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye!
James Earl Jones?
A grapefruit.